Before we get into the show, I want to tell you about the upcoming Clinical Foundations Mentorship Program with our good friend Erika Galentin from Sovereignty Herbs. So this is coming up from October 1st, 2024, all the way to March 31st, 2025. And the application deadline for 2024 is September 1st, so that's coming up. You will work directly with Erika, who has almost 20 years of clinical experience, where the clinical programs are designed to help you gain confidence in your skills and help you move forward in your clinical and business career. The program may be a good fit for you if you are transitioning from graduate to practitioner, taking the leap from theory to real-life clinical practice, seeking expertise and guidance in your case histories, needing assistance in developing your own protocols, desiring feedback about your clinical and legal forms, looking for support when dissecting complex cases, gaining confidence in your capacity to practice as a clinical herbalist, or you're in the process of obtaining registered herbalist status, RH, with the American Herbalist Guild. Finding a clinical mentor is instrumental to achieving your goals of becoming a clinical herbalist, especially as you are transitioning from herbalism student to practitioner. The online interactive Clinical Foundations Mentorship Program was created to provide guidance and support as you embark on your journey of clinical practice. So Erika has been a longtime friend to not just me, but the Herb Rally community. I highly trust her knowledge, skills, and teaching, so I definitely recommend checking out this program. I will leave a link at the top of today's podcast show notes where you could click the button and learn more about the program. Also, I think I'll read a couple of testimonials from previous Clinical Foundations graduates. So the first one, they said, "The online mentorship course is inspiring and brilliantly designed. I love the way that an immediate community can be found in meeting more practicing herbalists like myself getting started in clinical work." And another person wrote, "Observing Erika in clinic was tremendously beneficial with the added bonus of group discussion after each case. My understanding of what a clinical herbalist's actual casework looks like has evolved. After this work with Erika, I feel so much more confident about stepping into this career." So some amazing testimonials. Definitely recommend checking it out. Like I said, I'll leave a link at the top of today's podcast show notes. And one more time, the deadline is going to be September 1st, 2024 to register for Erika's course. Learn more at sovereigntyherbs.com/clinical-foundations or just click the link in the podcast show notes. Now, on to the show. Hey everyone, this is Mason and you're listening to Herb Rally. Today's episode is another edition of the Herbalist Hour, and this time I'm joined by energetic herbalist, educator, and artist Bonnie Rose Weaver. So I've long heard of Bonnie Rose's work, so it was exciting to have them on the show. Now this one was recorded via Zoom, and my microphone settings were a tad off. I was actually dog sitting, and when I set up the mic, apparently I didn't set it up correctly. So my audio is not too bad. I just wanted to give you a heads up. Bonnie Rose's audio's completely fine, sounds great. And they're the one that's actually doing most of the talking anyways, because they're the one being interviewed. So definitely, please continue to listen because Bonnie Rose really brings it. Great storyteller, great teacher, had a wonderful time chatting it up with them. Bonnie Rose teaches us about whale medicine. It's actually in Bonnie Rose's logo. Their experience studying at HerbPharm and the Blue Otter School of Herbal Medicine, which, just a sneak peek for you, dear listener, a Sarah Holmes episode is coming out very, very soon. Sarah Holmes is one of the instructors at the Blue Otter School, so I'm very excited to release that. We also chat about Bonnie Rose's book, Deeply Rooted, and cover your ears if you don't like swearing, because we also talk a little bit about basic bitch shit, and a whole lot more. So once again, it was great to have Bonnie Rose on the show. If you'd like to learn more about Bonnie Rose and their work, head to bonnieroseweaver.com. And as per usual, links will be in the podcast show notes. Also, before we get into the show, I'd love to thank yet another 5-star Apple Podcasts written review. And apologies if I'm not saying the name correctly, but it's written by Amas Nitra Sri. And this was, again, on Apple Podcasts, 5-star, and Amas says, "My herbal companion. Hi, Mason. I love listening to your podcast while I prepare and make botanical foods. It is a perfect companion for helping with my flow in the kitchen. Thanks to you and your family for the beautiful podcast." Thank you, Amos. That really means a lot to me. And yeah, I like to listen to podcasts while I also prepare some botanical food. So glad you're doing that as well. And we could keep you company. And yeah, I hope you continue to enjoy the show. We got lots of great episodes in the pipeline. So yeah, if you, dear listener, have a moment, Really helps us out if you leave us some sort of ranking and review in your podcast player of choice, whether that's Apple, Spotify, etc. And yeah, go ahead and leave us some sort of written review. I read each and every one of these on the show, and it always brings a smile to my face. So thanks once again, Amas. Last but of course not least, I'd love to thank our Herb Rally Schoolhouse members. Thank you all for your support. You really help keep the lights on here at Herb Rally, from everything from the podcast to the YouTube channel to the Herb Rally Schoolhouse membership area, which you all know has lots of awesome herbal content inside. There's lots of classes, herbal community discounts, so on and so forth. So if you'd like to learn more about the Herb Rally Schoolhouse, go to herbrally.com/schoolhouse. Don't forget to use coupon code podcast to get your first 30 days for free. Then it's only $10 a month after that. And we've got a great class coming out soon with Rachel Witt. Rachel did a class for us called the Harvest Calendar. I was able to attend it live via Zoom. And I can't wait to release it to the Herb Rally Schoolhouse members. So stay tuned for that. And lastly, be sure to check out the Clinical Foundations Mentorship Program with Erika Galentin. Starts in October, early October, but registration ends September 1st, 2024. So that's coming up in a couple weeks. So if you're looking to transition from graduate to practitioner, take the leap from theory to real-life clinical practice, seek expertise and guidance in your case histories, if you need assistance in developing your own protocols, and a whole lot more, definitely check out the Clinical Foundations Mentorship Program with Erika Galentin from Sovereignty Herbs. And as always, I will leave a link to that at the tippy top of today's podcast show notes. So that is going to do it for me today. Enjoy today's episode with Bonnie Rose Weaver. Talk to you soon.
Welcome to the Herbalist Hour. This is where community gather, merging the power of people and the flowers, the sweet and the bitter to the salty, the sour. Umami, it's time for the Herbalist Hour.
Welcome back to the Herbalist Hour. Today I'm really excited to have on Bonnie Rose Weaver. Welcome to the show, Bonnie Rose.
Hi. Welcome. Thank you.
Of course, yeah. We're going to dive into your background a little bit, but before we do that, I know you're an artist, as well as an herbalist and an author, but I just want to know the significance in your logo. What is the whale all about?
Such a good question.
Thank you.
So it's interesting. I've had the whale logo now since 2017, 18 maybe. A friend of mine, Nicola Householder, she's out of Portland, created it for me, and
cool.
it came out of when I was studying at Blue Otter with Karen Sanders and Sarah Holmes. They were in Mount Shasta at the time. I studied with them in 2017, and part of the training is learning about animal medicines, and it's not a part of the training that I'm really able to like totally teach on or speak about, because it's part of the indigenous training that we receive from Karen's lineage, Choctaw lineage. But medicine, animals have like kind of their own energy, right? And so the whale medicine is one about community and community healing. And Jane Bell speaks about this in her Hawaiian essences. I believe they're called the Jane Bell essences, but they're based out of Hawaii. And so she talks about that, how like when you heal yourself, you heal the community. And that was really profound to me. And I just, I think my practice of herbalism is very much rooted in community. And I also, live in San Francisco. And so like whales are our neighbors. Karen, my teacher, also just kind of shared with us these different aspects of whales and just the profoundness of like how big they are, how ancient they are. And like, the more you learn, like I got to learn about whales of like, they sing, they have these really complex social structures. And recently I started watching, I think like National Geographic has like a short series on them, and it's just incredible, like just who they are as beings. And I think the most important thing is that Karen talked about how when we're practicing herbalism in this energetic way, we really want to think about like the profoundness of like how of like scale, I guess. And so she would have us imagine like how big is a whale, which is like larger than like I think the human size of normal going about things, right? Like it's already a big thing. But then the whale itself is in the ocean, which is like even huger. And to just help us imagine how huge the ocean is, she would have us think about whales swimming through the mountain ranges that are underwater.
Mm. Wow.
So, just having that kind of like that feeling and that energy, like as we imagine that picture, like coming into us and like feeling just like how expansive like this life can be and how this world can be. And a lot of what we learn at Blue Otter is about like helping each individual find like themselves and their unique vibration.
Mm.
And I think that's a big thing that the plants do, right? Like people are like, oh, like you can use like lavender and lemon balm like interchangeably, right? Like they're both nervines. And you're like, well, kind of. Like
Yeah.
they're different. Like they might live in the same neighborhood, but like they live different houses. Like they don't have the same house key.
Mm.
Uh, and so yeah, so that was really profound. And then my logo is also the whale actually like somehow swimming like with the moon. So there's like the stars,
Mm.
there's the moon, and it's just kind of like, it's just like we are just tiny little beings in this massive galaxy, and like who knows what can happen if you like open your heart to, that expansiveness when we're on our healing journey.
I'm so glad I asked the question. That's such a awesome answer, and yeah, you just kind of weaved the story for us. And I was just on a Vedic astrology reading with this podcast host named Isaac Hill with the Plant Cutting Podcast, and he talked about. Based on what he saw in my chart, a lot of my journey has been through self-healing and thus community healing, and a lot of the work that I do in the herbal community and everything. And it's just interesting to think of the whale as like a symbol for a lot of that. I'd never heard that a whale is embodies like community and stuff like that, but that makes a lot of sense to me. So thank you for sharing all of that.
Yeah, well, I'm a weaver, so
That's right. Exactly. You weave the story. I love it. And I also thought it was really neat that it was your friend that made the drawing, even though you're a wonderful artist too. And honestly, I've only just started recently looking into more of your work. I thought it was your drawing based on kind of the similarities. I don't know if you agree or not
oh
as
no,
far as the
totally.
styles. Yeah.
She made it look like I made it. She's
Oh,
great.
cool. That's
Because
awesome.
I do have some experience doing graphic design, and I did all the graphic design and layout in my book. But
Mm.
at the end of the day, I'm way better herbalist than graphic designer. And
Okay.
after like a couple
Yeah.
hours on the computer, I want to throw it up against the wall. So yeah, I hired Nicola to help me just kind of like set up shop. And she did an amazing job.
Awesome. And dear listener, if you want to check out some of Bonnie Rose's work, you could go to bonnieroseweaver.com. Also at Bonnie Rose Weaver on Instagram as well. Awesome. Well, let's delve a little more into your background. What were you like as a kiddo, and kind of how did you find herbalism along that way?
As a kid, when I think about my little kid self, I was silly. I really liked being kind of like unique and like weird. Like that was a word I really identified with. Um, I remember in like second or third grade, being asked like, what do you want to be when you grow up? And I wanted to join the circus as a trapeze artist.
It's
Um,
pretty weird.
yeah, I mean, I don't even think I knew how weird that was. Um, I really liked being like physical, like being in my body. Like I loved like playing sports and riding my bike and doing like circus and um yeah, just love that feeling. And I think that can kind of tie us into how I came to herbalism, which is that when I was little, I was diagnosed with asthma. And so
Mm.
that um I was on inhalers, and that would often like hold me back from being like feeling in my body. Like I was not a great swimmer, and if I like went up to the Sierras for summer camp, I was always like the last one to pass the swim test, and like I would get an asthma attack, and I'd be that kid in PE with like the fanny pack with like albuterol in it, and
Mm.
I didn't really trust my body to like take me to where I wanted to be. Like I was fearful, oh, if I do this, then like my body's gonna stop working. Um, and I didn't have super severe asthma. It was pretty mild, but I was on like steroids, and I think yeah, I didn't grow up in a way that like I grew up in San Francisco, and like my parents are just like more like Western minded people. Like herbs were not in the house, where they were not like even an option. And I hated going to get healthcare. Like I hate it. I would like have like panic attacks when I would get my shots, and I think yeah, it was like a traumatizing experience.
Yeah.
And so then when I was 18, I moved up to Olympia, Washington, and I went to college there. And just the community and like the culture of Olympia and Washington State is like way more in touch with plants. Like, there's a forest on the Evergreen State College campus, and I'd like go walking in the forest, and my friend asked me, like the first like month or two of college, like, what's your favorite fern? And I was like,
There's
there's
more than one. Yeah.
To me, the forest was just all green. It was all the same
Mhm.
stuff. And yeah, I slowly kind of just got exposed to like people have their own vegetable gardens, and when they're sick, they go to the herb shop. And I think over time, it just kind of became more and more in my consciousness. And then one day, I was just like ready for it, and I had some time, and I went down to the herb shop, and I read in a book, I believe it was this book that I have right here, Herbal
Oh,
Medicine, Part of the Earth,
classic.
by Cheryl Tilgner, and she has some good like anti asthma recipes in there, and I just gleaned from that and put together something, and I drank that tea for probably about 3 months solid, and actually maybe up to a year, but I think around 3 months is when I started to really notice like I did not feel like my body was going to fail. I did not need my inhalers. That was in early 2010, and I haven't taken inhalers since then. Um, and like have shared that story with a lot of people. And I think it's really meaningful to others, but it's also like probably the most important thing that's happened in my life, which was like feeling, strong and healthy, and that like I can help myself, and that the plants can help me. And I think coming from the city and coming from a place that is very like westernized, like I mean San Francisco is known for like the hippies and the like counterculture movements of the 60s, but growing up in the 90s, and then living through like different tech booms in the city, because I've
Mm.
mostly lived here since graduating from college. It's not that, it's just a very urban Western place. And so, realizing that there's just so many people in the city who don't have access to parks or plants or herbs, um, and realizing like I got to do that, I basically just from then on have been committed to sharing this with others, and in particular, people in San Francisco.
Love it. Yeah, that's about the most evergreen student question you could ask someone is what's your favorite fern? That one's pretty funny. Did you ever end up going to the dandelion seed conference when it was there in
Yeah.
Olympia? Oh, awesome.
Yeah, I got to
Yeah.
go, and I taught at it one year. I taught a
Nice.
medicinal plant cultivation um, session with a farm that was going on up there at the time too, rose root herbs. Yeah, I love
Cool.
dandelion. And Dandelion Seed Conference was a fundraiser for the Olympia Free Herbal Clinic, which is also where I had my first ever herbal consultation.
Wow.
Yeah.
Can you share with who,
Um,
if you
I
don't
don't recall in this
Huh.
moment. Yeah.
That's all right. Yeah, I went to that event twice. In fact, I spent my 30th birthday there, which was
Oh.
super awesome. Yeah, that was actually this October will be 10 years ago. So, yeah, that Olympia holds a special place in my heart. I love it there. I'm a Eugene, Oregon kid, which is actually where Cheryl Tilgner, the author of that book, is from. So, very cool. Well, did you have anything to add to that, Bonnie Rose?
Oh, I think maybe we have been in the same room before. If
I would guarantee it. Yeah. I probably went yeah, twice for my the once for my 30th birthday, and I think I went the year before. I'm pretty sure I was only there twice though. Just a quick break from the show to let you know about our herbalism freebies. So if you'd like to get a bunch of ebooks, herbal community discounts, videos, audio lessons, all the above and more, you could go to herbrally.com, and at the top of the navigation menu, you're going to see a button that says freebies. So when you fill out that form, you're going to be signing up for our email newsletter, and in exchange, you're going to get a ton of herbalism freebies, and you're going to love the email newsletter because it updates you on herbalism events, new YouTube videos, etc. So I know you're going to love it. So thank you so much. And now back to the show. But I was just in Olympia a few months ago. I got to hang out with Gene Madrone and Sean Croak.
Yeah.
I'm sure you know them. And yeah, we did some plant walk stuff with each other. And yeah, it was super fun. So
And those folks, G Madrone and Sean, like those are people who like they were the first herbalists I knew. And I don't know that like they know
that's
that,
cool.
or they
Yeah,
know like I hold a special place in my heart
that
for
is so
them.
cool.
There are people who like, were like, I'm doing this, and I'm like, what?
I want to do
Like,
that.
you can do that? Like that's a
Yeah.
thing? Like how? So yeah, they're really special people and wise plant people.
They're so knowledgeable, and yeah, going on that plant walk with them a few months back, I guess it was probably even last summer now, like I just love them so much. And yeah, they're super knowledgeable, super kind, and yeah, I love Olympia. Well, I would like to hear more about your experience learning from the Blue Water School, as well as what it was like working at, or I don't know if you worked there or if you studied there, but HerbPharm. I saw that in your bio. I'm always curious about people who do that as part of their herbal education.
Yeah. Let's see. Herb Farm was summer of 2012.
Hmm.
And um, so when I made the herb tea blend at the herb shop in Olympia, that was like January 2010. So between then and Herb Farm, I had been doing a lot of self-study. I graduated, I moved back to San Francisco, and I had gotten really into urban agriculture here. And so, a lot of when people think urban agriculture, they think food.
Hmm.
And I think that's something that's also kind of intersected into my path of like, why do we think just food? And that's something that I think people aren't entirely ready for yet.
Yeah.
It's almost like I think a Western thing of like production and like utility and um I'll say we because like I'm probably in that mental boat of like we think like native plants like those are good for the environment or so, like some kind of like category of like this is for that there's the bee people who they make honey, and then there's the people who care about the native plants and the food plant, and it's like, and so then I'm over here like, can we get some herbs and a
Right.
lot of herbs. Like the first urban farm that I worked at was Little City Gardens, and so many of the way I started working with the herbs was just because those herbs were weeds. Like I was weeding out the plantain in between the kale, and I started working a little bit with like chicory, and
Hmm.
there was a lot of volunteer calendula that they didn't mind if I picked, and yarrow, and then I made like my first salve and my first bitters, and I loved being outside. I think as a millennial, like I came out of college and it was the recession, and like I had a college degree and I worked at a grocery store for minimum wage, and I was just like, F all of this, like what? And I just didn't know what I wanted to do. I didn't really have like any goals, but I just knew that I loved being outside. And so that's, I think, a big reason of why I went to Herb Farm, as well
Hmm.
as the price. Like, just to be completely honest, like I believe that We need to, you know, pub make herbal education more of like a public resource because it's just so cost prohibitive. Like, it's expensive and then there's no guaranteed job at the end of it. And so I think, yeah, like having the herb farm program be like a work trade is really what
That's cool.
it. And yeah, it was the herb first training I did. And so I think it's really interesting because it is, this big company. But the way that they did the internship was like we didn't go to like the company HQ until like the last week or something. And there's just so much that they really focus about like being in the fields. And there's a person there, Mark Disharoon, who's
Mm,
one of the main farm workers and managers, and he's an incredible herbalist. And he was the first person I ever did like a plant spirit meditation with,
cool.
and really just like leading from that point of like, look at how far these plants can take you, which I think is really different than like the external herb farm, which is like 3 to 4 dropper fulls, 3 to 4 day.
Right.
And that's like a pharmaceutical dosage. Um, so it was great. And there was this thing, I actually mention it in my book a little bit. And it was this experience of being out in the fields of a field, like what we would call like a field essence. It's on page 31 if folks have the book or they want to get it. But basically, like, there's this wild thing of if you've never been in an acre of echinacea in full bloom, like it's so trippy. And it would happen again and again and again. But basically, like the flower essence or like the spirit medicine of a plant would kind of like enter us as we
Mm,
were harvesting the herbs and working with them. And it was just really, really profound, like
that's
being out
cool.
in echinacea, and there's just like so much joy. Or every week on Wednesdays, we would harvest calendula, and like just seeing the field change from like orange to green over the course of the day, and seeing how as you pick, over the season, the plants get taller and they start making more buds, and it takes us longer to get through the field. So then like by the end of summer, we could only get like halfway through the field of calendula. Yeah, it was just like this. I want to feel like I was like submerged into
Yeah.
it. And like a lot of really great teachers. I mean, I think it's a great program. I think I wouldn't, be the herbalist I am today, or I wouldn't have had the access that I had because, like I said, it was free and I felt like it was a fair exchange. I mean, it's definitely like small living quarters and, like things that you have to sacrifice. And I don't know that I would like do it now as, like,
You paid your dues.
yeah, 12 years later. But it was good. And then was another part of your question?
Yeah, I was going to ask about the Blue Otter School, but it does sound like you would recommend to a beginning herbalist or someone just starting out on their journey that you would recommend the herb farm apprenticeship.
Yeah, I do. I mean, I think especially if you're on the West Coast, like,
Yeah.
it's really easy to get there. And it was really interesting for me living so rurally.
Yeah.
Um,
Did you make kind of like friends that you even have to this day there, or
I did.
yeah, that's the best part about herb school, in my
Yeah,
opinion. Yeah.
I got to meet when I was there. I don't know if we haven't spoken in a long time, but Sarah K. Benjamin of the Cosmic Kitchen. Do you know her?
Oh, like Cosmic with a K.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've heard of that person, but I don't think I've
Yeah.
ever met them.
We
Yeah.
went we went there together.
Oh
Um,
wow.
we met there, which yeah, it's really cool because like she had been doing an herb school in Florida, and then
Huh.
she ended up moving out here to the Bay Area, and like she's been doing Cosmic Kitchen for a long time. Um and then I have another friend who, yeah, we're still really close, and like she has an 8-year-old daughter and a 4-year-old son who are my godchildren. So
Wow.
yeah, it's a
Go to
good
herb school.
place.
Kids, go to herb school. Yeah, I am always fascinated by the Blue Otter School as well. So I would just like if you could tell us a little bit about going with Karen Sanders and Sarah Holmes, which you kind of already talked a little bit about.
Yeah. Um, it took me a long time to want to go to herb school. I think to be completely frank, there's not a lot of good herb schools.
Mm,
And I think actually, as I say that, I think it's just that people don't know exactly what they're getting. And I think that way that
mm,
herbalism lives in this culture, you know, it's not like certified. There's not like you're not getting a degree, you can't get scholarships. And so it's like it's living in this gray space that then creates this like ambiguity, and there's
mm,
not necessarily like clear expectations of like what you're going to get, how the teacher is going to show up and like what they know. And I just think that like
interesting.
I see how so many herbalists just like for lack of a better word, like struggle. And I think that a lot of that comes from how hard it is to be an herbalist, like in the 21st century in the United States. Like it's not an easy profession. And I always aim to like work on that reputation or like really try to avoid like things coming out sideways. Cause I think that a lot of times we're just like struggling to get by to practice this craft. And I think sometimes that comes out in like, herb school students feeling like they got ripped off or like they didn't get what they wanted or like it wasn't a
Mm,
professional school. And so like, not to name any names, but like there was just herb schools out there where I was like, why would I go there? Like, why would I pay for that? Why would like, and I applied to them, and I
yeah.
visited them and I would sit in classes and like people are like wrapping crystals in the corner and they're like teaching about how to make, you know, like elderberry syrup. And I'm like, bro, I learned that from a book, like
Yeah.
on my own.
Yeah.
And so I think a big part of when I was looking for herb schools is like, what do I want to get out of it? And a big
Mm,
piece was like, I want to be with people who don't want to just use herbalism at home for their personal use and their families. And not that there's anything wrong with that, but like because of the way that I got into it, of like my personal journey and realizing how many people from like my community could use it, I'm just like very like social justice oriented, very like community minded, going back to the whale,
sure.
um,
Yeah.
where I'm like, I wanna go to an herb school where it's those people and teachers who like have those values. And Karen Sanders and Sarah Holmes both really aim to educate clinical herbalists. And what's really interesting is that um at one point, like when I first started my business back in 2014, I'm coming up on my 10-year anniversary, April 1st. And I did not want to be a clinical herbalist. Like when I first started my business, it was just so after I came back from HerbPharm, I started a medicine garden in the backyard of an apartment building that had been my mentors of urban agriculture. It was their first space. They gave it to me. And so then that's where I learned how to grow all the plants. And I
Is
just
that
like,
1849?
yeah, 1849
Nice.
Medicine Garden. It was on the corner of 18th and Guerrero and in San Francisco in the Mission. And it was like the secret garden. And I was just like reading Richard Check's like website and books and just like trying it, just like, let's see, like the sandpaper on the seeds and like the cold stratification. And it was just like this big trial process. And I just poured my life into it. And a big reason I got to do that was because I had deferred going to a different herb school. I was like, do I want to pay X number thousands of dollars to do this with like the crystals and the elderberry syrup, or do I want to just like teach myself like how to grow these plants and like sit with them, and then I started getting those messages like I had learned at HerbPharm from like the field essence and like the plant spirit meditations. And I was like the plants are my teachers,
Mm, yeah.
and in the city, like what a juxtaposition. So Yeah, when I decided to go to Blue Otter, it was kind of a big deal because I had written my book. The garden ended up closing, and so then the book was kind of like me processing that grief and like creating a document of like, I did this, I learned all this stuff. Like, if you want to do it, this is like a starter guide. Like, this is your little like step up, that all the mistakes I made, like these are the herbs that grow the best. This is like what happened. These are the transformations that I experienced. So like passing that on, documenting it, and then I got to do a little book tour, and then through that I realized like I'm meeting all these people and they want to know more about the herbs and they want to go deeper, and I'm like, okay, I'm ready to be a practitioner.
Mm.
And I had heard, like being in the Bay Area, I had just heard about Blue Otter, and it ended up just feeling like the right place to go. And I think not Karen and Sarah are incredible people and they're incredible teachers, and learning Karen's lineage, like from that lineage and her tradition, was incredible. I also think a huge part of the medicine was living up by Mount Shasta, living in like rural Siskiyou County, and like in the classroom you could see like the mountain on a clear day, and we would go up and visit a lot of like wild stands, or just like go up into the um Alpine lakes, like the mountainous
Mm.
lakes up in those areas. And like you're probably familiar, Blue Otter, it has a reputation of like anti-wildcrafting, and so like we had a garden there, and we learned, like I was in charge of the woodland bed, and so like learning how to take care of those like shady plants, black cohosh, blue cohosh, wild yam, bleeding heart. And there's just like all these different corners of this, like I think it was maybe an acre garden
Oh,
with
wow.
different, maybe 50 to 100 different herbs. And yeah, so it was like values aligned there too, around like cultivation. And yeah, it was definitely a transformative experience for sure.
I think that's also really good advice for the budding herbalist is take your sweet time to finding where you might want to go. I just had on my alma mater, Columbine School of Botanical Studies, on the show. I interviewed all four of them. And what they do before you go to their school is you go through a 3-hour interview. And they say they're interviewing you, but what they say is really you're interviewing them to see if what their school offers is what you want to learn. And I think that's a really good piece of advice. Know what you want to get out of an herbal school before you spend thousands of dollars and God knows how much money, or I mean time, and just all the headspace to dedicate to that. So that's really great advice.
And not everyone wants to be a clinical herbalist.
Right.
I think those of us who do and who want to take on that responsibility, like that's a different path than like the home herbalist, the community herbalist, and like one's not better than the other. It's just a different type of training and focus.
Yeah, I'm just a podcast host herbalist, so so yeah, I've definitely toyed with the idea of being a clinical herbalist, and maybe I will sometime in the future, but it's not calling to me. That's cool that you're doing it. Actually, this might be a good moment in time to promote your clinical herbalism. I want to say I read on your website you say you're a clinical energetic herbalist, if I'm recalling correctly.
Yeah.
Yeah. But do you want to speak about your practice and how folks might be able to work with you?
Yeah, sure. So the energetic word that's comes from Blue Otter. So
Mm.
the energetic herbalism is what Karen and Sarah teach. And it's interesting. I think that word gets thrown a lot around a bit in herbalism. Like I think when people think energetics, they think maybe like cold, hot, damp. Maybe they think of like Matthew Wood, and Matthew Wood did study with Karen,
Mm.
but
I didn't know that.
the energetics that we go into at Blue Otter, I would say it's more like what we think about as flower essences.
Hmm.
As far as like how we're going to pair plants with people. But then it's also a big part of it is learning how to read energy, and not just looking at like the physical body, but looking at like spirit body and emotional bodies. And I kind of think about it as like supporting people being like physically well, emotionally well, spiritually well, artistically alive and well, and making sure that, yeah, they're feeling like they have that sense of purpose. And so, yeah, I mean, I think a lot of this stuff, it's like stuff you already know, but it's like the ancestral trauma, the family trauma, the personal trauma, and it's like somebody is not necessarily going to sit down at an herbal consultation because they have a stomach ache and tell you about their like ancestral trauma. And it's connected, it's like trusting that like everything is truly deeply connected.
Mm.
And that doesn't mean that we're not going to overlook, are you chewing enough? Do you have enough hydrochloric acid in your stomach? Do you have like, are you having ulcers? Like, that we're going to heal on like a physical level too. But what I really notice as an energetic herbalist is that a lot of people will come to me with like a physical issue, say it's a stomach ache or something. And then as we work together, we move into more of like the emotional, spiritual, energetic pieces of it, because you're kind of just like, okay, we got that off the table. Like, okay, now I'm having a bowel movement every day. Like, but I'm still getting these stomach aches every now and then, and I'm eating really good food and I'm doing my overnight infusions, and I'm getting exercise, but like I feel like, I'm getting these stomach aches and like it's around this time of the year, and that's the time of year that my grandmother died and whatever, and so it's like, how do we get into that? And then you have to touch it. You have to touch it, which is hard. Like Karen is famous for saying like, it ain't always pretty, like healing ain't always pretty. And I think about that as like, the healing crisis of like, it gets worse before it gets better a lot of times.
Mm.
And I think we're not used to that. We're used to going in the Western world, we go to the doctor, they make us feel better, but it's not going deep down into the root of it. And so thinking about like, okay, I have to think about that person that I lost, or I have to think about that really traumatic experience, and I have to, like forgive myself, or I have to forgive them, or I have to like move that out of my body because it's like stored in there, and that's why I'm getting that stomach ache. And it can just be in so many modalities. Like I think that's something that I really appreciate about my practice is, um, while I do certainly focus on herbs and like what herbs can do, sometimes I'll recommend like journaling exercises to my clients, or really just thinking about how do we do these things practically. Like if, part of your stress is like you're not getting to work out enough, it's like, okay, well then what can we do to like just make it you're more motivated to like go ride your bike, go pick up your library books at a different library and you have to ride your bike there or something. And so there'll be diet recommendations where appropriate, definitely like, body positive, and like manageable. It's not like here's like 20 different things. It's like try these 2 things, and then next time we talk, we'll check in and we'll see if you're ready for some more lifestyle. Yeah, and then really trying to help people like connect with the herbs on the physical and spiritual ways. So in a formula, I'll have, if let's say I'm giving a 2-ounce formula, it might be like an ounce of burdock, an ounce of chamomile, and then there's like 2 drops of, an essence or something that's like a smaller part, because like we're working with those energetics of like balsam root or something, and we're doing
Mm.
like grief and, digestion and grief, right? Like maybe that was the formula for that stomach ache person. Um, so looking at different ways of dosing and different kind of ways that we get sick, like heartache and grief and trauma and the physical body as well.
Totally. So, do you primarily work with people in person or online or both?
It's kind of varied. I mean, before the
Yeah.
pandemic, I had an office and I did work in person. These days, I'm mostly doing online, although I would like to eventually do more stuff in person. I have this dream. When I started going to therapy, whatever, many years ago, um, I would I met with this like student, you know, it was like a therapy student. It was like my first therapist. And we would meet in this clinic in downtown San Francisco on like the fourth floor of an office building. And I like look out and the only thing I can see is like other office buildings and the whole freaking environment is concrete.
Right.
And I'm like, how is this supposed to be healing? Like, it's kind of traumatic for me to come downtown. Like, I'm from the city, I live in the city, but like I live like more areas where there's parks, you know, like where there's trees. And like I'm coming downtown at like 4 or 5 o'clock when it's rush hour and everybody's trying to get on the bus. And like, this is so stressful. Like, what are we doing? And she's like, well, the dream is definitely like meet you outside, you know, like let's walk. And so I'm hoping at some point I could meet folks in person, like this idea I have, I'm calling like wild walk, where we like go for a walk. There's this really beautiful park in San Francisco where it's like a wild canyon and it's like a lot of native plants and you just don't even know you're in San Francisco anymore.
That's cool.
So I think about, you know, like how do we really, you know, embody some of these practices of like, you know, a healthy life, like you're creative. A healthy life, like you go outside, you have connections with plants, you have relationships with like the natural world outside. And, you know, I think that a part of the medicine could start to be, let's meet in the forest.
That's a cool idea. Take your client on a walk with you. I've never heard someone say that before, but I absolutely love it. It sounds like a lot of your practice, Bonnie Rose, is centered around basic bitch shit. And dear listener, I was talking to Bonnie Rose pre-call what they might want to talk about, and Bonnie Rose said, "Let's talk about basic bitch shit." And
Basic bitch shit.
yeah, let's hear all about it. What is that? I told my daughter we were going to talk about this, and she goes, "Oh, you mean like pumpkin spice lattes?" And
How old is your daughter?
she's 12.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah,
she's pretty cool.
I bet. Um, yeah, I mean, that's a great point to her point. Like, I think people think basic bitch is like this negative, right? It's like, oh, it's just like that basic outfit, that basic latte, whatever, you know. And
Yeah.
I think what I'm trying to do with my practice, one of my practice kind of like touchstones and like things that I really want to do is basic bitch shit, which is just like let's eat, sleep, shit, and drink
Yeah.
water. Let's just try doing those things, see how it works. And I think what that means like on a day-to-day is I really want to work with folks who want support in their like digestive systems, their nervous systems. I think those are two systems that are really impacted by, in particular, urban life. And so working with people in cities, in particular in San Francisco or the Bay Area, but any city, I think our nervous systems are just fried. Like they
Yeah.
are just so incredibly taxed. Like I don't meet a client who isn't stressed, you know, and we're just doing so much to keep a roof over our head and pay the bills. And it's stressful living in a city. You know, I think thinking about the climate chaos that we live in, I think we're going to need to live in cities. I think that more people in closer areas reduces carbon emissions and all that. But like, we also need to think of the impact on our psyche, on our body, on our energetic body. And so I want to support people who have that, you know, need. And I think it just can't be overlooked, like brushing your teeth, you know, like just hygiene, you know, getting outside, like going on those walks, those things that sometimes we really just forget to do. And it's okay, you know, but I think it's even sometimes embarrassing or hard to admit that we forget to do, or that we feel lonely in a city, or we feel, you know, like we don't have access to good vegetables or something. And it's like, you know, how do we just peel back those basics and are like, okay, when are you going to get to the farmer's market? Like, where can you get your fresh vegetables? You don't have to grow it all. You don't have to eat every single thing organic, but like, how do we get ourselves to like some of those basic things of like eating vegetables and drinking water and sometimes that's going to be our herbs are in our spice cabinet too. And so, looking at the medicinal value of like black pepper and using salt as, a purifier, doing a steam with like um the thyme or oregano. And it's just like it doesn't have to be fancy, it doesn't have to be
Totally.
complex, you don't have to even be making the elderberry syrup. Like
Yeah.
let's just, use what we have. And I think like a lot of times in my practice, I'm really trying to like reckon with this idea that herbalism is somehow elite or like you have to know certain things or you have to pay a lot of money to go to herb school or pay a lot of money to see an herbalist. And I just want to break down all those barriers. And so I've really tried to focus on how do we make herbalism more accessible
Yeah.
in my mission since day one. And so recently I'm that's where I'm looking at like these wild walks or doing like group consultations because what does it mean for something to be inaccessible? So yeah, like can we make it cheaper? Like if the herbalist gets paid, like can we just make it cheaper? Like can we get grants? Can we do like a group consultation where everybody pays a little bit and
That's cool. I haven't heard that group consultation aspect. So I didn't mean to interrupt, but I've heard you say that a couple times now, and I just think that's a wonderful idea. So you're hosting these, or have you done these yet?
I'm just getting started to launch the first one. I'm not entirely sure when it's going to start, but it actually comes from, I have to credit Gina Badger, who's also a Blue Otter herbalist up in Vancouver, BC.
Oh,
And they did this presentation for an AHG conference a couple years ago, and they shared it with some folks. And then that has kind of just like sparked that in me as far as like a model. And I know Gina's done it a little bit. Gina also goes by Long Spell online, and yeah, Gina's done it. And there's other people. Kelly McCarthy in the Northeast is doing it, I believe, as well.
nice.
It's kind of based on community acupuncture, that there are different models of like, how do we just make this cheaper and practical for
Right.
people? So yeah, I'm
And you're
hopeful.
and you're supporting the herbalist too. That means you're getting a fair wage too, hopefully. And yeah,
Yeah.
that's just a wonderful idea. I know you've got a client here in about 10 minutes, so you got time for maybe one more question or so.
Yeah, let's wrap it up with one more.
Awesome, let's do it. Well, thank you so much for your time, Bonnie Rose. This has been awesome. There's been so many I've learned a lot, and I'm excited to re-listen to this when we edited it. So, sweet. Well, I think that you should plug your book. We have a couple times. It's called Deeply Rooted. You could get it at bonnieroseweaver.com. But I guess if you want to say anything about your book, feel free to. But I'd like to end the show on maybe um, we've already talked about quite a bit of advice to the beginning herbalist and how they could approach their journey. But if you were to give any advice to the budding herbalist just starting out on their journey, want to make this their life's path, what would you tell them? And yeah, please also say anything about the book if you like.
What would I tell a budding herbalist? The first thing that comes to my mind is like drink your nettles.
Amen.
I think that it can't be overstated like the self-care. I mean, it's just like you can't take care of other people if you can't take care of yourself. And it's not
So
like
true.
you can do it on Monday and not do it again until that like the weekend. Like you have to do it every day. Um, I think that there's also a big piece, and I can hear like Karen and Sarah echoing in this of like, you're gonna just have another job for a long time. Like I think that the
Mm,
financial reality um is just so real because you have to educate as an herbalist, you have to not only educate people how to use herbs, but why they would even want to in the first place and what an herbalist even is.
yeah.
And so I don't feel like I have another choice. I had a year. I am also like a professional teacher, and last school year I had taken a full-time job. as a high school health teacher, and I just could not imagine also seeing clients. And so I put it down for a year. And that was probably the biggest teacher in my 10 years of running an herbal business, was like, I can't live without it. Like, this is my passion. This is my, like in, Japan, they say like ikigai, like your reason for living. And if that's you, like, you have to follow that, and you have to bring it into your life. But like we were saying earlier, Mason, like, it's not everybody's job to be clinical. It's not everybody's job to get to a certain level. And so I think it goes back to like what we were talking about with herb schools of like, what do you want out of it? What's your goals? And I think doing some soul searching and like peeling back the layers of like, where do I want to go? What's the direction? Like, find your people, find the teachers you resonate with, and like following that. Like, there's nothing that has made me more happy than like feeling like I'm pursuing exactly like my life's work, like
Totally.
being herbalist person is like what gives me meaning. And so that was a lot, but hopefully something
No,
out of
I'm
it.
I'm inspired, and I know you got to run, so we'll leave links to the book.
Yeah.
It's called Deeply Rooted. It's beautiful. Again, the art's by Bonnie Rose. I want to say there might even be other contributors in there as well.
Yeah.
And yeah, just also I encourage you, dear listener, to read the story of 1849 Medicine Garden on BonnieRoseWeaver.com as well. I'll leave a link to that as well. I thought that was fascinating. Bonnie Rose, we'll have to have you back at some point because we still got to talk about nettle, infusions in a thermos, shiitake, all the above. But I'm glad we got to learn about basic bit shit and all you do in the wonderful herbal world. So thanks so much for your time, and we'll talk soon. All right.
Thank you, Mason. You're wonderful.
Oh, thank you so much. I appreciate that. Bye, everybody. We'll see you in the next episode. Take care.
Bye.
And that's going to do it for today's episode. Thanks so much for listening to the Herb Rally podcast. If you'd like to hear more from us here at Herb Rally, we now have a text message community, believe it or not. Basically, it's just updates from us. We send about 1 to 7 texts per week, notifying you about new events, videos, courses, podcasts. You get the idea. It's pretty much like our email newsletter, just in text form. So if you'd like to receive text messages from Herb Rally, just text JOIN, that's JOIN, to the number 541-256-2895. Again, that's JOIN to number 541-256-2895. And to stop receiving texts, that's easy too. Just text STOP to the same number. It'll opt you out immediately. Okay, thanks again for listening. Have a great rest of your day.